Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where the movie news cycle came roaring back to life, pun intended, with the surprise debut of the first full trailer for Marvel's Black Panther. Yes, things have really slowed down for over a week with the Harvey Weinstein scandal, as everyone not only looked inward as to, what was happening in the industry, but a number of people found themselves running for cover. But I think that with the Black Panther trailer this morning, I think perhaps we will be turning a page, and hopefully things won't go back to business as usual. But Hollywood will go back to the business of making movies, hopefully having learned a lesson. I will say on a side note that I think that the takeaway from the Harvey Weinstein scandal should be getting rid of predatory sexual situations in any work environment. I do not like the fact that some groups, and I told you activism will often push too far, and that's one of the problems I think with modern day activism. And that now people are trying to use this. I saw a lot of people saying, well, why aren't there more women in upper management? Why don't we talk about that? And it's like, you're going to dilute the conversation to such a degree that people are just going to walk away. Now, of course, I think it should predatory sexual situations of any nature, and I'm glad that some people took this opportunity to try and shed some light on some other travesties, but I think that we have our lesson to be learned. Let's learn it. Let's implement the changes in the industry, hopefully, and I think the biggest change will be not being quiet about it anymore, and let's move forward. Social media, quite the game changer. But anyway, today's morning movie news was delayed because of the Black Panther trailer. I had to get up my reaction, but also the shot by shot. But I didn't want to miss today's episode, not only because I missed Thursday and Friday, but because today is an all viewer question episode. So I didn't want the people whose questions I picked to not get them answered. So the first one came in this morning on Twitter, actually, from Brian111. And Brian111 wanted to ask about one of the few news stories that surfaced over the weekend that was not anything to do with Harvey Weinstein, and that's that Cher is going to appear in the Mamma Mia sequel, which is indeed the case. And I think that's a fabulous idea. Now, for those of you who don't know, the reason I picked this question is not only to shed some light on Mamma Mia, very successful film, and I don't think it has that image of being a successful film. It was the most successful film worldwide ever directed by a woman until Wonder Woman came along. But also, I wanted to take a chance to, take the opportunity to remind you, or to tell you if you don't know, that Cher is actually, has had a very illustrious career in the movie business, and deservedly so. She started out in, it's hard to transition from being a singer to being an actor. Lady Gaga right now is trying to make that transition. But Cher came in with Silkwood, a Mike Nichols movie with Meryl Streep. She had a small role, but she got a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress right out of the gate. That led to some really nice situations, like she was one of the witches of Eastwick, very good in that movie. And then, of course, Moonstruck, early Nicolas Cage. If you haven't seen Moonstruck, you should totally see it. It's an excellent movie, fabulous performances across the board. Not only helped put Nicolas Cage on the map, of course he's also a Coppola, but Cher not only won another Golden Globe, this time for Best Actress, but she walked away with an Oscar. Then she followed it up with Mermaids, which has kind of a cult following, but she had a lot of creative differences on Mermaids. She went through three directors, replaced two. Some big names as well, and that didn't turn out so well. So I think she kind of started to get the reputation of being a diva. Apparently, she was a little bit gun shy after Moonstruck, wanting to make sure she had a good follow-up, and then she ended up having no follow-up. And then, unfortunately, she also apparently had an illness. Sonny Bono died, even though, of course, they were no longer married at the time. But still, Cher is a really interesting person. And one of the greatest Cher stories I have recently heard is that she heard that they didn't have enough bulletproof vests in the military, which is like, what? And Cher was like, how do they not have bulletproof vests in the military? Shouldn't the government provide that? Well, if the government won't provide it, I'll provide it. And she foot the bill and sent over a number of bulletproof vests to our armed forces over there. And I thought that was really commendable. But she's kind of making a little bit of a comeback right now. In the Billboard Music Awards earlier this year, you might remember that she made a lot of headlines for knocking it out of the park with her performance. Stole the show, and still wore the same amazing outfits that she's been famous for throughout her career, including the one that she went and picked up her Oscar in. And so I think it's wonderful that they're going to bring her in Mamma Mia. They say that she's the sequel's secret weapon. I totally believe that. And I think she's a great match vocally with ABBA. Of course, and this is the songs of ABBA in the first musical. It's a huge, Broadway sensation, and they made a movie out of it. And now, of course, they're returning. And so I don't know. We'll see what the situation with Meryl Streep is. Nice to see them actually, come to think of it, reuniting after Silkwood. But of course, Meryl Streep has really stepped in it politically, and I think there should be some concern about how it'll affect the film. But Mamma Mia 2 is only filming right now. Let's see what the situation is when the film comes to be released. But I hope it can have the same success. The first one I thought was fun. It was very, very fun, and the ABBA music is fantastic. ABBA is one of those great. It's weird. They don't have the same broad. They're not as well known as like the Beatles, but the ABBA's really up there in terms of like a very famous musical group, and their songs are amazing. All right, so that's the first question of the day. Now the second question comes from Spencer DeVow, and Spencer says, "Hey Grace, I have a question. Squeak squeaks, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Here comes some Grace. Over the past week or so, you've been mentioning stories involving talent and their agents and managers. My question is, what exactly is the role of an agent and a manager? Are they two separate roles done by two different people, or rather just interchangeable terminology for the same job?" Good vocab, Spencer. "I'd also like to know how much control the talent has over their agent and or what their agent and or manager does, for example, the terms of a contract. Thank you for picking my question." Well, to your last point, you can ask your agent and manager what to push for, and often your agent and or manager will be more aggressive than you. Because, they're used to it, they have the relationship, and it's their job to be more aggressive. Whereas the talent is nervous about making sure they just get the gig. Or sometimes they don't want the gig, and they're like, "You're going to have to talk me into it with an amazing deal." So I think it's more of a collaboration of what to ask for, with the agent and manager leading the way when it comes to negotiations. Although famously, Bing Crosby, had such an amazing image as a sweetheart, but that's because he just had his agent and his manager do all his dirty work, and he was actually a really tough, mean individual, Bing Crosby. Very dark person, but an amazing singer. And, he had a brand to protect. So sometimes an agent and manager are someone you can hide behind as well. All right, so an agent, they are indeed two different jobs. So an agent is someone who handles the day-to-day aspects of your career. Also, agencies will package you. We talk a lot about packaging. That's something that's current today. It used to be the studio system would package you in-house, but now agencies do that, and they come to studios or financiers with a complete package. So that's what an agent does. And they're, again, day-to-day. Whereas a manager is supposed to be planning your long-term career over, the long run, and, thinking, where do they want you to ultimately end up? And what steps need to be taken to get there? Whereas an agent just wants to bring in money to the agency now, right? That's a big thing. Like I told you, Scarlett Johansson was like, "I don't think that's enough money for Black Dahlia." I think that was the film. And they were like, her agency said, "Well, if you don't want it, we're going to give it to Natalie Portman because we want to make sure that the role stays in the agency," and she'll take it. And they weren't willing to negotiate on her behalf at that point. So a manager also, by the way, can produce your projects, where an agency can't do that. But a manager is often credited as a producer. Brad Gray, for instance, who went on to form Plan B with Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston, he was their manager, went on to run Paramount. He couldn't have done that as an agent. He unfortunately, tragically passed away, I believe, this year. You don't need both. Ultimately, you would probably want to have both, but you do not need both. You just want to have, in the beginning, you take what you can get. All the power is on their side, whether or not they want to represent you. They see some value in you right now or potentially down the line. Also, to warn you, sometimes an agent or a manager will hip pocket you because they feel you're a direct competitor with their client that they already have. So they decide to represent you, and then they just don't submit you for anything to get you off the board. So that's something also to be careful about. Now, when you become a bigger name, other agencies and managers will try to lure you away, and also sometimes people leave if they're unhappy. For instance, Gal Gadot just recently left her manager, as we've discussed. And for instance, I think it was William Morris, I think this was the case. William Morris Endeavor took away CAA's whole comedy division, as you might recall. It was one of those recent situations. And that sometimes agents can also be taken to other companies, and usually they bring their whole client roster with them. Now, if you have a really good agent manager, because you've come up together and you've forged the career together and you've made choices together, you often will have an agent manager for your entire career. Sometimes there's fallings out. For instance, there's a famous situation where Barbra Streisand, she made her agent's career and vice versa, but then Barbra Streisand eventually decided to walk away. That totally ruined that woman's career, and she was no longer a power player in Hollywood. And so, as I just pointed out to you, talent can often make or break a manager or agent's career as well. They have their star client, and they build the rest of their roster around that person. They say, oh, hey, look what I did for so-and-so. I could do that for you. For instance, I believe it's Ari Emanuel, Rahm Emanuel's brother. Yes, that's true. Rahm Emanuel have, of course, famously worked for Barack Obama, then went on to be the mayor of Chicago. His brother is Ari Emanuel. He represented, I believe, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. His being their agent helped him have his career in Endeavor, and he got to the point where he was able to lead Endeavor, all because of who he discovered, basically, or helped shape the careers of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. And that allowed him to get other talent, etc. And that allowed him to become the head of his own agency. So you can see it's a very, reliant on each other relationship. So I hope that's helpful to you, Spencer. Great question. Next question is from Coffee is for Closers, from Boss Baby. Love it. And of course, also cookies are for closers is from Boss Baby. The avatar for this BTT viewer was from Boss Baby, but that of course is from Glenn Ross. But the question is, I love that Boss Baby has taken that over. So question, Grace, greetings from London. What do you think of director's cuts / extended cuts? Where do you think they enhance the movie, or are they just shameless cash grabs? Love to hear your thoughts. Great question. I'm not usually a fan, but I feel there's been a change in movie making, which is one of the reasons I picked this, and in addition to the fact that there are a lot of extended director's cuts going out there. For instance, bottom line, though, I just want to say up front, I think that the theatrical release is what everybody should see as the main. It should be the only release. Why would you hold anything back from theaters, right? I mean, that's your shot. You want to take the best shot possible at getting good reviews, building a legacy for the potential franchise down the road, or your artwork, and box office, of course. Now, Blade Runner and, the original Blade Runner and Batman v Superman are two infamous cases of director's cuts, because those director's cuts fundamentally change each film. Blade Runner, but these are spoilers if you don't want to get into this, so I'll give you a chance to move ahead to the last question. Okay, so in Blade Runner, Ridley Scott's cut made it seem that Harrison Ford's Deckard was a replicant. And that's a huge change, obviously. And then also in Batman v Superman, that director's cut, or the extended cut, took away any culpability for Clark Kent as to what happens in the film. I liked Clark Kent making mistakes. There's a learning curve, obviously, and I think that it would lead to him eventually being a better superhero, hopefully. But I thought it was interesting. But I know it annoyed a lot of Superman fans. And so in the extended cut, because they're like, he doesn't make mistakes, he's Superman. But in the extended cut, he was cleared of a lot, like, oh, he could, this was lined with this, he couldn't have seen it, and this was, it gave him a lot of outs, which I didn't like. And also, which is the official version? I don't like that question floating around. And as we discussed on Movie Math, that hurt Blade Runner 2049, because people were like, I don't know which version to watch as the first film, so I'm just going to bow out of the whole thing. Now, these days, because digital film is so cheap to film, to use, and there's a lack of strong creative voice and control. There's a push and pull at the studios. A lot of directors are unsure because they're working in mediums that they're not used to, blockbusters. They're like, I'm an artistic filmmaker, and this is such there's such scrutiny on these blockbusters these days. I'm worried I'm going to embarrass myself, so I'm going to shoot a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll just leave a lot of it on the editing room floor. But then the problem becomes if the audience is like, well, I saw glimpses of that, like infamously with Suicide Squad. I want the Joker Harley Quinn footage. What did you take it out for? Also, Kingsman the sequel, there's a whole extra or almost an hour's worth of story that has been taken out. And I think, obviously, when you watch the movie, you can tell that there's stuff missing and you want to see that. It's also like when they took Rogue out of X-Men Days of Future Past. All the Rogue fans, myself included, are like, I need to see that. So from a fan perspective, in those cases, I want to see the footage. But really, I really have just overall, I don't like it because I think it indicates a lack of discipline with the original cut and filming the movie to begin with. Do a good job, right? Okay, so that's the third question of the day. Now, the last question comes from Jurassic Godzilla. It says, Dear Grace, I've been wondering for a long time how video games influence the corresponding movie that come out at the same time period. Take, for example, Jurassic World Evolution, which releases at the same period June with the corresponding movie Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. How much do you think that Jurassic World Evolution will influence Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom? Do you think that it will increase people's interest to go to see Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and increase the box office numbers? I've been watching your videos for nearly 1 year now, and I'm happy to tell that you have been an entertaining movie teacher for me. Congrats for your awesome job. Lots of kisses from Greece. I love hearing from where everybody's from. So great question, Jurassic Godzilla. So first off, anything that can get the audience thinking about your movie is a good idea, right? Be it a video game, ads, the news, social media stunts like what they're doing with Thor Ragnarok right now. You just want the publicity department's goal is to make it seem like their movie is a must-see. It's a cultural event because more and more people are saying, I'll just wait to see it on streaming. So you really want to create a situation where it's like, it would be uncool of you to miss this movie. Don't be a wet blanket and sit it out. So, of course, you want to have a lot of activity around your release, and that's what they're doing here. Now, with a game, it's a little bit risky. What if the game is not any good and everyone starts saying it's horrible? What if people spend so much time playing it, they're like, I'm Jurassic World out, I don't want to see the movie. But in this case, they're very smart to release the game with the movie, so it's not like coming out a month or so earlier. It's not setting the stage for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It's more of a, did you enjoy Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom? Why don't you extend your experience and continue it with playing this game? Now, what's interesting to me about this is because this comes from Universal, and there are just recently a flurry of articles about how Universal has significantly bulked up their branding department, which means that this is going to be happening a lot for Universal movies. Even beyond their theme parks, Universal has been the only studio who's been able to challenge Disney in the theme park business, thanks, of course, to Harry Potter. They're going to have to come up with something new eventually to keep the competition going, but for the most part, it's been incredibly successful. So I think they were like, let's keep going. Why should Disney have all the fun and the money? So they've hired a whole team of people and a new person to head it up, and they're going to be really working hard to build up branding opportunities like this video game, etc. So, any upcoming, and that's great because, Universal has Illumination Entertainment. They just got DreamWorks Animation, and so they have a lot of good brands over there. The Fast and Furious movies. So it would be fabulous to see them be able to do more with that. And I think it's great. Anything to extend the movie-going experience, I think is great for the business and the moviegoer. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for tuning in. Please write down below, I think, today's top 4 questions, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching.